So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do these problems together, at least some of them. The rest I want you to go home and work on. You're going to have questions. That's great. Tomorrow you don't need to come back with completed homework. You need to come back with questions about these. Because if you don't have questions, you don't try it on your own, okay, you're going to be lost tomorrow. So do or do not. I don't care whether you do the homework or not. But you need to come up with questions. So I would attempt it tonight, okay? It's not due tomorrow. Okay? We need to do this algebra review because we're struggling with that a lot. So if you don't come in with questions, you're going to be lost. Number 1 is 2x plus 1 equals 3y minus 5. I'll write it nice and big so everybody can see it. And again, if I need to scroll or if I can scroll, please tell me. Okay. So here's what the directions say. They say rearrange the equation. Right? We're not changing anything because we change the problem, right? It's not the same problem. We're not allowed to change it. We can just rearrange it. Changing the problem is like tearing off all the stickers, right? Putting them back on. Not allowed to do that. If we could change the problem, you know how I'd solve this? I'd substitute it for a different problem. I'd write 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's the problem I want to mess with. I win, right? We have to deal with the problem that's given us. That's life. But we can look at it a different way with a different perspective. Maybe gain some insight. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to rearrange this, move stuff around. Now, how many terms do I have on this left side? 2, right? Terms are separated by what? Addition or subtraction, right? So we have term number 1, term number 2. They're separated by a plus sign. Why is this not 2 terms? That 2x. They're together, right? They're in holy matrimony. Okay? If we want to separate them, we got to do some divorce. That's division. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to move this term. Whenever we move terms, the whole thing, right? Either move the whole thing over or don't move it at all. Go big or go home. When we move the whole thing, we either add or subtract it. That's it. If we want to move just the 2, can't do that. Adding or subtracting means we move everything, so the x comes with, right? We want the x to stay. So let's move the 1. Move the whole thing over, right? We either add or subtract it. What are we going to do? Subtract. That's where you look at the sign and do the opposite, right? So what we get is 2x on this side. The 1 has been moved over to here. So the thing that was already there was 3y minus 5, right? That was already there. And I moved the 1 over here by subtracting it. Okay? Everybody cool? Now, the way I wrote this, I have something minus 5 minus 1. Is there a better, simpler way to write that?
3y minus
3y minus what? Not 4. If I subtract 5 and then subtract 1, that's the same as subtracting minus 6, right? I can either subtract 5 and then subtract 1, or I can just subtract 6 all at once, right? I think you guys think too hard about this, right? Negative 5 minus 1.
I think it would have been easier to just add 5.
Yeah. I'm breaking it down. Break it down, okay? So, minus 5 and then subtract 1, right? If I have 10 things and I subtract 5 and then subtract 1, it's the same thing as just subtracting 6 to begin with, right? Don't think negative 5 minus 1. Think I took away 5 and now I'm taking away 1 more. I took away 6. Okay? Now we're here. Everybody with me? Is that a knock at my door? No?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, now, we only have 1 term over here. We want the x to stay, everything else must go. That's what we're doing by solving for x. It means get x on its own and equal a bunch of junk. Sometimes you get x equals 4. Sometimes you get x equals a bunch of crap. We're going to get a bunch of crap. That's okay. So how do I separate the 2x? We're not moving it, right? Because that would move the whole thing. Divide. Now, division is divorce. We saved this for last. It's the last step, okay? What happens in divorce? Everything gets divided, right? Not just both sides, because you don't know what that means, right? Oh, yeah, both sides. No. Everything, every single term. So when we divide this by 2, what's 2x divided by 2? Well, that's 1x. It better be. That's why we did it, right? Cool? Now we divide this term. What's 3 divided by 2? 3 over 2, right? Fractions are just division for lazy people. You don't need to think about that. It's 3 over 2, right? Keep the y. Now, why do we keep the y? I thought we had to divide everything by 2. Why did we divide the y by 2? We divide every term by 2. So we already hit this term once, didn't we? I just did it with the 3 instead of the y because, I don't know, I keep my numbers together. You have to do it once per term. We already did it once for this term, so we don't have to do it to the y. Now we do it to the minus 6. What's minus 6 divided by 2? minus 3. X is on its own, so we're done. Box it. Now, there's another way to do this, starting from here. So my next step is to divide by 2, right? When I do that, I get x on one side, and then I take the whole thing, right? The whole thing, and divide it by 2. That's another way to write that. Whatever floats your boat. See how both divided everything by 2? Here, I divided the entire side. Just put it all over 2. Sometimes that looks gross. You might not want to do that, okay? Other times it's better to divide each thing individually, okay? So x own. Now let's get y on its own. So same problem, starting from the beginning. And now we're going to get y on its own. So is the 2x or the 1 bothering the y? No, it's on the other side of the world, right? There's the equal sign, right? What's bothering the y? The 3 and the what? The minus 5, right? So the 5's got to go, the 3's got to go. If I want to get rid of the 3, what do I need to do? I need to separate it from the y, right? Separation is division. We save division for last. Is there anything else we can do? Minus 5. I want to move that entire thing, don't I? That entire term can go. So if I'm moving an entire term, I either add or subtract. What am I going to do? I'm going to add it, right? So what I get is the stuff that's already there. I added the 5 over. And I moved the entire term. Now Mr. Eads is like, what are you doing? Why is he saying, what are you doing? He's annoyed. What can I do with this? If I add 1 and then add 5, it's the same as adding what, Tucker? If I add 1 and then add 5, it's the same as just adding what? Adding 6, right? So let's be more concise. That's combining like terms, right? We know what 3y equals, but we want to get y on its own. We got to separate from the 3. Separation is what? Division. And division is divorce, which means everything gets divided. So when I divide by 3, this gets divided by 3. What's 2 divided by 3? 0.66666666. Good luck writing that down. 2 over 3, right? 2 divided by 3 is just 2 over 3. Fractions are division for lazy people. What's 6 divided by 3? Because I had to divide this term too. 2. That's convenient. What's 3y divided by 3? Well, it's y. That's why we did it, right? To get 3 gone. So y is on its own, so we're done. Yes. So it says solve for each variable. So you need to solve for x the first time, then y the second time. Later there'll be 3 variables, so you need to have 3 different answers. It's a lot, I know. But it's not homework. But man, would I encourage you to do it. Eventually, we will turn it in. All right. Another way I could have done this, starting from here. Do you remember from last time? I'm dividing by 3, right? What's another way I could have written this? I'll give you a hint. That's what we did last time. Yeah, put the whole thing as a fraction. So I get the whole thing on this side divided by what? Not 2. This one's 3, right? That also works. Either way. This says take that and divide it all by 3. Well, here we did actually divide it by 3, right? We divided this one by 3, divided that one by 3. I don't know. Whatever floats your boat. Sometimes that looks really gross. Sometimes this looks really gross. I don't know. Questions on number 1. Separation is division. Division is divorce. Divorce happens at everything. It's messy. Typically, we like to move everything out of the house before we do the divorce, right? Move stuff over. It's like a prenup. Smart. Not necessary, but smart. We gotta listen to Gold Digger in here. It's gonna happen. You know what Gold Digger is? Is Kanye even relevant anymore? All right. Probably not. Number 2. Here we are. 2 is xy over 9 equals 2p. 2p or not 2p? That is the question for Maddie. All right, so great question. Got him. All right, so which variable do you want to solve for first? We got x, we got y, we got p. P. It's almost on its own, right? Now, do we subtract that too? No, because subtraction or addition moves the whole term. We'd have to move the whole thing, right? We want P to stay. 2 has to go live with their parents, okay? That's what divorce is. So how do we separate the 2 from the P?
Multiplication.
Not multiplication. Multiplication isn't separation. That's the opposite. Bound chicka wow wow. Okay?
Subtract.
Divide. Separation is division, right? Right? I want to separate those 2. Divide them up. So I divide everything by 2. Check it out. On this side, we get P. On this side, what happens? We get xy over 18. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll just write that down. Don't do that. Think. This is pizza. Now I got your attention.
No, that's just
Imagine a pizza. Good job. Now imagine I cut that pizza in half. I got 2 halves, right? Now imagine I cut it in half again. I get quarters. So what I'm saying is if I divide by 2 twice, that's the same as just dividing by 4 once. Oh,
what you do 13.
great question. This is our pizza, xy. It was already divided into ninths, wasn't it? Then I cut those ninths in half. Now I have 18ths. Do you see how I had 9 pieces? So I had 9 different pieces. This is going to be fun. 2, 4, 8. If I have 8 pieces, I'm not going to do 9. 9's hard. If I have 8 pieces, right? I have something that's already divided by 8. And then I decide to divide it by 2. Check it out. Everything gets cut in half. Remember, divorce happens to everything. How many pieces do I have now? Same as dividing by 16. If I cut it into 8ths and then divide it in half, I get 16 pieces. Up here, it was already cut into ninths. I cut those in half. Now I've got 18 pieces.
How'd you cut 9 in half? You got 18.
I didn't cut 9 in half. I had 9 pieces, and I cut those into halves, right? So now I have 18 pieces. You see how the pieces got smaller, but now I have more of them? Check it out.
It's the same as the 9 times 2.
It is. Why? Because I've cut it into 9 pieces, and now I'm doubling the number of pieces by cutting them in half. It's kind of weird to think about, doubling the number of pieces by cutting something in half. But it makes sense. Let me try this. Forget the pizza. Unless you're going to Jets for pizza. 9 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That always happens. Right? 9 pieces. We're already cut into 9 pieces. You agree? 9 pieces here. Right? Now I'm going to divide by 2 to move it over. That means I divide it in half. Watch what happens when I divide it in half. How many pieces did I get? 18. Do you see how I went from dividing it by 9 to dividing it by 18? Yeah, Jets pizza. That's the key. Mr. Mac learned something today. Circles suck. All right. How you feel? Because that's done. That's P. P's on its own. We're done. P equals a bunch of junk. Now let's go get x and y. Starting from the beginning. xy over 9, same problem, equals 2p. Is the 2 or the p bothering the x or the y? No, they're on the other side of the equal sign. They're fine. So who cares what's happening over there, okay? What is bothering the x and the y? The 9, right? Divides by 9. How do you undo division? How do you undo divorce? Multiplication. Bound chicken. Right? Now, just like divorce, multiplication is messy. It gets everywhere, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to apply it to everything. So when we times by 9, every term gets times by 9. Now, luckily, we only have 2 terms here, right? So it's hard to forget. Everything gets times by 9. If you divide something by 9 and then times it by 9, it cancels, right? So we just get xy. That's why we did it. Over here, you have 2 of those things, right? Something times 2 and then something times 9. Isn't that just the same as something times 18? Right? 9 times 2 is 18. You dig? I times both sides by 9. I get 18 here. Are x and y on their own yet? Not individually, right? They're a couple. They're together in holy matrimony. There's no plus or minus between them. They're an item, one term. Time to home rec. We're going to separate them. How do we separate in math? Division. We're not going to subtract y. We're not going to subtract x. That moves the whole thing, right? We want one of them to stay behind. One gets to stay in the house. The other has to go live with their parents. Okay? So which one do you want to stay in the house, the x or the y? The x. So the y's got to go. So we're going to divide by y, aren't we? So everything divided by y. Well, that's x because it moves it, right? Separates them. And then you take the thing that's already there. The thing that's already there, and then divide it by y. All right? I divided by y to both sides. So I take the whole thing and divide by y. Is that co? We good? We good? Co. We get a twofer here, because if we start from right here, we can get y on its own pretty easily, can't we? What do I need to do to get y on its own? Divide by x, right? So I keep y, and x has to go live with its parents. 18p over x. There's x. There's y. And we did p on the last page. Ain't so scary if you know what you're doing. We move the whole thing by addition or subtraction. When we want to move only part of it, well, we need to separate, right? Division. How do we undo divorce? Multiplication. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? How we undo divorce? Do I need to spell it out for you? Okay, wonderful. Because I can. It only takes 3 letters. All right, here we go. Number 4. Like and subscribe. Number 4 is 5 equals p over x minus y. Now you're wait, hold on. I skipped number 3. Why did he skip number 3? Why do you think I skipped number 3? It's easy. Why is it easy? Exactly. So notice how x, p, and y are all separate terms, right? How do we move terms? Add or subtract. So you want to get p on its own? Add x and y. Boom, you're done. Right? You want to get x on its own? Well, subtract p and add y. You're going to need to get rid of that minus sign in front of the x, though. How do we get rid of a minus sign in front of an x?
Another minus.
Negative x is the same thing as negative 1x, right? So you need to divide by negative 1. Pause. Everybody, what happens when you multiply by 1? It stays the same. What happens when you divide by 1? It stays the same. What happens when you divide by negative 1? Well, 1 means it stays the same, right? The negative means change the sign. So when I divide by negative 1, it just changes the sign. That's it. Okay? So here we are, number 4. 5 equals p over x minus y. Let's solve for p first. Check it out. Your dilemma is like, what do I do with that? That's gross looking. Substitute an easier problem. If it was p over 2, what would you do? You'd undo division by 2 by multiplying by 2 to both sides. Yay, 10 equals p. It's not 2. It's some number. So we're going to multiply by that, right? Both sides times that. What is that? X minus y. Do you see how there's 2 terms here? So if there's 2 terms, we have to wrap it in parentheses. There's 2 guys there. Okay, we're doing multiplication with multiple things. Okay, it's best we wrap it. So here we are. These cancel. We get p equals 5 that's already there times the thing we moved over. This thing. Do you see why we had to wrap it in parentheses? That 5 is going to distribute. If we don't, it'll just be 5x minus y, and that's not okay. It's 5 times the quantity of x minus y. 2 terms here. So when we multiply, we do it in parentheses. Quiz next week on this. All right, so p is on its own, so we're done, right? Let's go get x and y on its own. Now pause. I'm going to do it from here. I'm not going to go back to the beginning. Because see how x and y are on the bottom? That makes things hard. Let's go from here. So here's our problem. We're going to get x and y on its own. What's bothering the x and the y? The 5. This is one term because it's multiplication, right? 5 times something. How do we undo multiplication? Divorce. So we divide by 5. You dig? Question, do we need the parentheses anymore? Now, there's no more multiplication going on. We can take the parentheses off. So here we are. X minus y equals p over 5. Is x minus y 1 term or 2 terms? 2. So we can just move stuff, right? So which one do you want to move? Which one do you want to keep? Let's move the y. How do we move a negative y? So we keep the x. We keep what's already there. P over 5 is already there. And then we add the y that we just moved. That's it. X is on its own. Now this is a twofer. We can easily get y on its own. So if I want to keep the negative y, how did I move that x? I subtract it. Now here's the thing. We talked about this earlier. I've got a negative in front of that y. How do I get rid of it? I don't add. I want to separate the negative from the y, so I need to divide. Divide by what? Divide by negative 1. That changes all the signs. Y equals negative p over 5 plus x. Best of luck on the homework. I'm going to post 2 videos online. Watch them if you need help on it. Come in with questions. Later.